Some lands are so silent that you could never imagine strange things once happened there. Some even believe that if you live long enough in such places, you will begin to hear whispers at night, like wind sneaking through the cracks, like someone recalling. I arrived at that fishing village on an autumn morning. The salty sea breeze, the pale sunlight, and the unusually calm air greeted me. I rented an old house standing apart on the hillside, from which I could overlook the small village with its rusted tin roofs and an empty wooden pier. I chose this place to write, a love novel full of tears whose ending I had yet to know. Perhaps because my previous manuscript had drained me so much, I needed a quiet place to gather my emotions again. And that was when everything started to become strange. The next morning, I rose very early, put on a windbreaker, and walked down the hill. The little grocery shop was wedged between two wooden houses with low roofs, with a tiny square window like a basement vent, dark inside, carrying the smell of dampness mixed with unburnt mosquito incense. Old shelves held packs of instant noodles, bottled water, bread, and a few candies children nowadays would not even glance at. I picked what I needed: some noodles, 2 loaves of bread, bottles of water, and a box of lemongrass mosquito incense. The shopkeeper was an old woman, skinny, her silver hair tied back. Her name was Old Madam Thut. She must have been past 70, walking slightly unsteady, yet her eyes were sharp and her mind unusually lucid. She sat behind a small plastic table with a hand-cranked cash register, something I thought I'd only see in old films. Every time she counted change, her trembling fingers looked like dry leaves. I worried she would miscalculate, but she never faltered. Whenever she looked at me, she smiled a toothless smile, something both kind and uncanny. "Girl, aren't you afraid to stay alone in that house?" she asked, her voice hoarse, as if she had just coughed. I laughed lightly. "I'm a writer. I rented it to write. It's so peaceful here. It's perfect." She nodded, squinting. "What's your name?" I replied, "Sue Anni." At that very moment, she froze slightly, as though a memory had rushed across her mind. Her wrinkled face flickered with something unreadable. Then she smiled faintly, almost muttering. What a coincidence. The old owner of that house was also from the Sue family. I paused. "Really? Which Sue?" She slowly began. "That house once belonged to a wealthy man in the village. People called him Sue, the patriarch. After his death, the house passed through the family, then to outsiders. The last buyer moved abroad, and the house stood abandoned for nearly a decade, until I came. As I gathered my things, she leaned closer, almost whispering. Sue the patriarch had a daughter. Her name was Sue Thut. Poor girl." Her eyes grew distant, as though diving back into an old memory. "People said she was pregnant out of wedlock. When the child turned 2, the house caught fire. She perished in the flames. No one knew why. After that, the Sue family sold it." A shiver ran through me. The sea wind rushed, tossing my hair into chaos. Something had just awakened in that story. I asked carefully, "Old madam, can you tell me more about Sue Thut?" She nodded, leading me outside under a giant banyan tree in front of the shop, where villagers usually gathered to gossip. But it was empty now. She brought out an old teapot, 2 cracked porcelain cups, filled them, and lit a cigarette. Smoke curled like time itself, sliding back decades. "Rarely does anyone want to hear these tales," she smiled faintly. "Sue Thut loved a man, a schoolteacher named Lu Kwuk Young. He came to teach for 2 years, and they fell in love. But her father refused. He wanted her to marry a wealthy cousin from the neighboring county. The story unfolded, layer by layer, like yellowed pages turning back time. Su Thut was barely 20, pale as porcelain, fragile, with eyes that seemed to hide untold sorrows. She rarely laughed, rarely went out, always carrying a silver-gray umbrella, even when it didn't rain. People said she was weak, prone to fainting, yet no one knew she carried a secret growing inside her. That night, lying in the house, I couldn't sleep. The waves outside beat steadily. In my bed, beneath a thin gray sheet, I felt chilled, as though mist crept beneath my skin. Sounds grew louder. The clock ticked, wind whispered through cracks, and then, very faint, a sound of footsteps on the floor above me. But this house had no upper floor. I sat up, heart pounding. The lamp flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed me whole. I turned on my phone's flashlight, its dim glow revealing yellowed, cracked walls. I listened. Nothing, just the wind. I told myself, only the wind. But wind does not make footsteps. The next day, I explored the back kitchen. Burned walls, beams blackened. Yet, in one corner, a small handprint lingered, pressed into the soot, as though someone had touched it, then vanished. From that night on, the footsteps returned, louder, sometimes like bare feet running across the porch, sometimes dragging slowly across the wooden floor. I tried music, earphones, sleeping pills. Nothing worked. When I left for a few days, locking everything, I returned to find my pillow flipped. On it, a long, black strand of hair. I lived alone. That night, too afraid to sleep in the bedroom, I lay curled on the living room sofa. The moonlight draped pale shadows across the window. Hours passed. Then, in the darkest corner, something stirred, like smoke, like a shadow slipping by. My phone rang. Unknown number. Only zeros. 0000000. I didn't answer. When it stopped, a message appeared. I'm still waiting. I nearly dropped the phone, but when I opened it, the message was gone. No record, no call log, only me, and a faint laugh from the bedroom. I packed immediately, fleeing into the night, but when I looked back, the house was silent, and in the upstairs window, the room once belonging to Su Thut, stood a white figure, long hair, faceless, and I swear something followed me down the steps. Days later, back in the city, the terror did not end. Nightmares of fire, a woman clutching a child, a silent cry. Then, in my apartment, the footsteps returned, always at 3 a.m. I moved 3 times. They followed. And sometimes, when I opened my laptop, words appeared by themselves. I'm still here. Mother, don't leave me. The fire hurt. It hurts. No one believed me. Doctors called it depression. Friends called it stress. But they didn't see the white figure outside my 13th floor window or the tiny handprints on my pillow each morning. Now, every night at 3 a.m., I stand before the mirror and count 1, 2, 3. At the 7th beat, I always hear it, a laugh, soft, right behind me, and the mirror fogs from a breath inside. They say no one has seen Su An Ni again in that village, but sometimes, on drizzling nights, under the banyan tree outside the old shop, people hear faint laughter and smell jasmine tea in the wind. And you? Do you believe something might be watching us? And if, one night, your phone rings with a string of zeros, remember, don't answer. They say the message is still sent every night at 3 a.m.